Thank you very much. Still no word on the fate of Standard Chartered, the latest British bank accused of doing business with Iran, but settlement talks are reportedly being held today. The superintendent of the New York State Department of Financial Services, Benjamin Losky, says, quote, for almost 10 years, Standard Chartered Bank schemed with the government of Iran and hid from regulators roughly 60,000 secret transactions involving at least $250 billion and reaping Standard Chartered hundreds of millions of dollars in fees. End quote. Ambassador Mark Wallace heads United Against a Nuclear Iran, a group pushing for sanctions and tougher enforcement of those sanctions that includes a call today for the UN to suspend Iran's membership. Mr. Ambassador, welcome. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
If weigh in first on whether or not you think New York State should revoke Standard Chartered's license.
I don't think it's time for a slap on the wrist. We think it's really important to send a message that the most egregious violators of the international sanctions regime should hear loudly and clearly that it's not acceptable to do business in Iran. And if the reports of Standard Chartered's business in Iran are true, we think that they should get the equivalent of the financial death penalty, meaning losing their license to do business in the United States and New York.
In the entire United States?
We do. We don't think it's appropriate for any business that operates in Iran, does extensive business in Iran, to have access to the U.S. markets. The choice is clear. Do business in Iran or do business with the United States. We've called for an economic blockade, and really it's very clear that the American markets are so much more important than the Iranian markets, and we think businesses and investors will always choose the United States over a regime like Iran.
Do you get the sense that the sanctions, as they have been put in place, are having the desired effect, regardless of what Standard Chartered did? In general, do you think that the sanctions that have been put in place so far are having an effect?
We've seen very good signs that sanctions are having an effect. If you look at the devaluation of the Iranian currency, the rial, it is off 70% since December. You're seeing the first time civil disobedience related to the increase of the price of foodstuffs in Iran. It's not enough, however. The recent sanctions bill was very good. It had included very good and powerful measures. But right now we're calling for a full economic blockade in Iran to make it clear that business in Iran is unacceptable. So we think half measures aren't appropriate now. A full economic blockade of Iran.
The reason I ask about whether or not you think they're having an effect is because it does not seem to be deterring Iran from pursuing a nuclear weapon. It certainly is choking off part of the economy. You mentioned the currency devaluation, but it doesn't seem to be pursuing them to put their plans for a nuclear weapon aside.
I think it would be unserious to say that sanctions alone will change the behavior of the Iranian regime. Any serious Iranian foreign policy has to include four components: thoughtful military planning and a credible military threat, diplomacy, special operations, the black ops that you've heard about related to computer warfare and other things, and sanctions. We think it's important to pursue all of them. Our business is that of sanctions, and we're pleased right now with the progress, but we can do so much more.
When you are overseas, when you are traveling, perhaps in Asia, for instance, or in Europe, and you talk to companies who previously have done business with Iran, perhaps, are they now willing to cut that off? Are they now willing to refuse to do business with Iran? And do they think that that will have the desired effect?
We've made enormous progress over the last 5 years. There are a few countries with companies that are operating there. Yeah, obviously China, India, South Korea, and Japan, where we need more attention. So our focus is on those companies, and we call on all investors to call on those companies in those countries that do business in Iran to stop doing business in Iran.
All right. Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much. Appreciate it.